Well, okay, I guess everybody is literally waiting on me. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Kalisha Barnes Johnson, and I'm a nurse scientist and assistant professor at Emory University's Neil Hashim Woodruff School of Nursing and the director of special programs at the Black and Gerontology and Geriatrics, or BIG community, as we like to call it. On behalf of all the members of the BIG community, we would like to welcome you to this webinar entitled We Are Here, Being Visible, Staying Visible, supported by the American Geriatric Society, American Society on Aging, Grant Makers in Aging, Healthy Aging Section Fellows at the New York Academy of Medicine, and the Southern Gerontological Society. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the BIG website. A notice to all attendees will be distributed once the recording is available. Without further ado, our panelists joining us today are Doctors Crystal Glover, Manka Nkimbeng, and Glenna Brewster Glasgow. On today's agenda, our experts will discuss their stories, provide their insights on how to stay visible as a Black researcher or practitioner in the field of aging. We recognize that these can be difficult and uncomfortable conversations that might bring up many emotions. Please know that we want to create a safe and brave space. Our intention is to educate and learn and not to further oppress or cause distress. Please feel free to reach out to a mental health professional if you feel triggered and need help. To provide an overview, there will be an audience question and answer session immediately following the planned moderated questions. The question and answer session will last about 15 minutes, and you can type your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. We'll check both at any time during the presentation. To provide context for our attendees, I will give each panelist about 5 minutes to introduce themselves. First, we will hear from Dr. Booster Glasgow.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much to the BIG community for having me here today. So I am Dr. Glenna Booster Glasgow, and I'm an assistant professor at Emory University in the Nell Hudson Woodruff School of Nursing. I graduated from the University of South Florida with a bachelor's and a master's in science degree, a master's of arts in gerontology, and my PhD in nursing science. I also had my Associates of Science degree from Broward Community College previous to that. When I finished my PhD, I went to the Center for Sleep and Circadian Neurobiology at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, where I completed a postdoctoral fellowship. And then I moved here to Georgia, and now I'm at Emory University. My research aims to understand sleep disturbance experienced by persons living with cognitive impairment and their caregivers, develop behavioral interventions to address the identified sleep disturbance, and then examine the impact of these sleep interventions on psychological, cognitive, and physiological outcomes. I am currently funded by the Alzheimer's Association and recently received the K23 award from the National Institute on Aging. I have previously been funded by the National Hartford Center of Gerontological Nursing Excellence, the National Institute on Aging, and I was awarded research supplements during my doctoral and my assistant professorship levels, and the National Institute of Nursing Research via P30 Center at Emory University in the School of Nursing, the National Heart, Lung, Blood Institute, through my participation in PRIDE. So PRIDE is actually a program to increase diversity in behavioral and sleep medicine research, but they have different sections. I did the sleep medicine program, and I also received a pilot from the Guayzeta ADRC here at Emory. I have served on different boards. So I've served on the board of directors for the National Hartford Center of Gerontological Nursing Excellence, and I served as a co-convener for the Nursing Care of Older Adults Research Interest Group for the Gerontological Society of America. So I am into nursing and into aging.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, we will hear from Dr. Nkimbeng.
Hello, everyone. My name is Manka Nkimbeng, and I am a nurse researcher and an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. And my journey to UMN started, I guess, in undergrad, where I did a nursing degree at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and then worked at a community health center for a little bit and saw some health disparities and thought we could have some policies that could change that. So I went back to do health policy. And in trying to understand more about health policy, I recognized that we needed research to enact policies. And so I went on to do my PhD at Johns Hopkins School of Nursing. And my research centers around understanding kind of social determinants of health and kind of causes and risk factors around function. So I look at physical function, including activities of daily living limitation, and cognitive function, including dementia. And my goal is to develop interventions that could later be translated into clinical practice and policies. And in my trajectory, I have been lucky enough to be funded by different funding mechanisms. I was funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Health Foundation through the Health Policy Research Scholar Program, where I've really understood how to build policies, how to implement them, and how to kind of study and follow them. And then I am also working on 2 projects now at the University of Minnesota. One of them is the African Immigrant Memory Loss Project that is funded by a Center for Health Disparities here at the University of Minnesota School of Medicine. And that is looking at risk factors, needs, and challenges for African immigrants, families living with dementia. And building on that, I've been funded by the Rigma Center at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health to develop a culturally tailored dementia education program for African immigrants. And so culminating those 2 experiences, I have a K that is now being reviewed in a couple of weeks at NIA to develop an intervention for families living with dementia and memory loss that is going to be targeting Black immigrants and their families. I am very excited to be here, and I've given you all a little bit about my background, but I'm open to questions, and I'm very appreciative to Big for inviting me to talk. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Nkimbeng. And next, but certainly not least, we'll have Dr. Glover.
Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal Glover. Thank you, Dr. Bonds Johnson, for moderating, Big for inviting me, and my fellow panelists. I am a social psychologist and mixed methodologist here at the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center here in Chicago. I also lead what we call at the center the Outreach, Recruitment, and Engagement, or CORE, where we focus largely on partnering, recruiting, retaining, outreach, community-based, all with demographically diverse communities all around healthy aging, cognitive aging, and caregiving, really so that we can move forward the idea and really actualize health equity. My work tends to focus on social cognitive processes as a social psychologist, focused on how people think about themselves and others within social environments, including research, education, housing, employment, and how that allows us to make decisions. And I really focus on Blacks, Latinos, and rural Americans. Let's see, I guess other things you can look up about me, but I'm here in Chicago now, but I'm originally from Louisiana, so I'm a Louisiana girl. I went to Louisiana State University for my undergraduate in psychology. I went on to Howard for a dual major in social and neuropsychology. I wanted to understand that brain society sort of interaction, and I minored in biostat. And I always focused on social cog processes among Blacks and Latinas, Black women and Latinas. But with biostats, quantitative approaches, I was thinking, I'm seeing a lot of good stuff here and understanding, but I think this is more the bone of a person. I would like to understand the muscle and the fat as well, the complete person. At that time, over a decade ago, qualitative was frowned upon or not as advocated for, at least in experimental social psychology. So I decided to go ahead for my postdoctoral research fellowship to say, well, why don't I pursue being a mixed methodologist? Meaning combining qualitative and quantitative to understand sensitive, nuanced topics along the life course, from clinical trial participation, brain donation, healthy aging, physical activity, financial literacy, you name it, all the topics that I saw central to aging in the United States, especially for demographically diverse people. So I said, I don't want to just flim-flam qualitative. I want to know theoretical frameworks, how to apply it, different designs, applications. So that's what I did. But I also recognized after that, I really want the grounding in health disparities and health equity, not simply differences between Blacks and whites or those kind of cursory or superficial understandings, but what does it look like within group? How do we have intersectional approaches? How do we include geographic location? And that's how I wound up at Chicago for a Health Disparities Research Fellowship here at Rush. And then after that, I was recruited into the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center. And I've been here 5 years. I'm funded by the National Institutes of Health, so grateful for that. I'm waiting now on a review of my currently or recently submitted R01, focused on clinical trial participation and building from the ground up culturally compatible and scientifically relevant clinical trials for Blacks and Latinos, specifically older adults and caregivers. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm just happy to be here today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Lovely introductions, and we will jump right in. As early career researchers, how do we increase our visibility to people who assume that our talent pool, so to speak, is empty or non-existent?
I guess I can start. I would say that for me, this started with attending conferences. So initially I would attend conferences and meet and talk to the researchers with whom I had shared interest or an overlap of the research. And then after you attend, then the goal is to start presenting. So whether that be orally or using posters. And usually when you're presenting orally, persons would come up and ask you questions, or they might ask questions from the audience. So that was another way. Or when you're standing by your poster, as people walk around and look at your poster, you start talking about your research, introducing yourself, and establishing relationships and perhaps collaborations. And another thing that they always say, whenever you attend a presentation, you stand up, introduce yourself, say who you are, and ask a question. So not only do the presenters know who you are, but the people in the audience also do know who you are. And after that, I also have, since I've been here, and they say you're laying roots and setting roots, that I've introduced myself and met persons affiliated with local and regional organizations and have collaborated with them to give presentations about my research, or even in areas about things that I am comfortable with. So as a nurse, I can speak about management of chronic health conditions, but also with my research, I can speak about sleep. So being able to do that for local organizations is another way that I feel that I have, and I'm able to make myself more visible. And not only that, I look for ways where I'm collaborating. So it's allowing me to integrate my program of research. So as it were, you're doing multiple things. You're being visible, but you're also finding ways to integrate your research into what it is that you're doing. So those are some things. One more thing is to have a really good mentor who's able to sponsor you, who will introduce you to others, but also will suggest opportunities for you to visible in an area where you're valuable.
Would anyone else like to add to that, or do we think Dr. Booster Glasgow summed it up really nicely?
I guess the one other thing I would add is just being, right now we're lucky enough to be in the area of social media. So having a strategic social media presence, it cannot be a consistent all the time, but making sure you're strategic. If it's Twitter, that is your professional profile, showing up strategically and thinking about how you want to represent yourself in the world, and making sure that in addition to everything that Dr. Brewster said, you're also present on social media on whatever platform you choose, but in a strategic manner so you're not burnt out too.
You're muted, Dr. Glover.
I'm here. Thank you. I'm there. I said I completely agree, especially regarding the conferences and the social media piece. I used to frown upon the social media piece. But really, as Manka indicated, being strategic, what would you like to say? And then connecting with others there. I found that so beneficial with connecting with community there, collaborators and other colleagues has just been wonderful. But to add to what everyone has said, I find one of the big ways that I manage or maintain visibility is writing. I love to write, whether it's with grants, really with papers, publications, so collaborating with others, presenting, symposiums. So that allows me to speak for myself, but really speak through the currency in our field, through all of our field, the research field, which is writing, grants, papers, presentations. So I really find that that speaks for you even when you're not there. And that's something to put on social media. And those are the things to engage with others on. So I completely agree with the other panelists.
Wonderful. Now to the next moderated question. Being visible comes with challenges that can disrupt our career goals. How do we stay visible while ensuring our safety and that our career trajectory is not derailed? And I'd also add, how do we maintain self-care?
I'll hop in here. That's a great question. And one that, quite frankly, I wish I had asked myself earlier. But now that I know. But the thing I would say is to really center on what are your goals, centering your priorities and what is your plan. So every collaboration, every project needs to have an end goal for you. And I know that sounds maybe a tad self-serving and selfish, but in terms of protecting your time, I really learned the hard way about being stretched thin. Now, having all of those opportunities were great and very excited, but I look back and I say, you know what? I could have had a plan for myself. I had it overall, but not having that more, for overused term, a scarcity mindset, meaning I can be selective about what I would like to do that will fit into my own agenda, do that and allow the writing and such from the first question to speak, and those other opportunities will come. So I think it's the balance of being strategic for yourself. And then who do you want to collaborate? I've gotten to know a lot of great people and I'm really excited about that. Some I see on this call here. And so I would say, think about what this means for your trajectory and your time and where you see yourself. And then also, how can you meaningfully contribute to what you're being asked or the other opportunities, making sure that you're bringing your expertise and not just say a checkbox in some way. So strategically partner for yourself and others. That would be my advice.
I certainly agree with that also. And I think one of the things is when you see an opportunity come and based on who it comes from, your first instinct might be to say yes. But before you say yes, maybe to sleep on it, think about it, discuss it with your mentors and trusted colleagues before you make a decision. And then it's totally, and we're always advising academia to say no, because as Crystal mentioned earlier, you can become stretched thin. And I think when you're stretched thin, then you become ineffective. So as a result of that, I would say after you've talked to them and you've made a decision, if it's no, you convey that and you perhaps offer suggestions and maybe say, maybe if you think that later on you may have some time, then you can also say that. But if you are supposed to say yes, that I would think about how does it meet multiple goals for you simultaneously. So for example, if I'm asked to give a presentation for an organization, I might say, well, in academia, we think about research, service, teaching. So for that presentation, it might cover the service piece of it because you're educating the community, but you might also say, well, I'll do something about my research so that I'm disseminating my research and I'm disseminating whatever results I have, but also you are establishing relationships in the community, perhaps with a population with whom you're going to recruit. So if you're establishing this relationship, then further down the line, you might say, well, I have this grant and I would really like for us to collaborate or ask whether or not you can assist me with recruiting participants for my study. So in that way, you're doing one thing, but it's able to really meet multiple goals for you. So that's one of the things that I would say when you're thinking about making decisions. Or if you're asked to guest lecture for a class, I know at Emory and some other universities, when you're bought out, you may not have to teach. But if you're guest lecturing, then you can guest lecture and ask for an evaluation at the end, and then that can go into your tenure and promotion packet. So being able to strategically make decisions that would meet multiple things simultaneously. And we have to understand that we have to prioritize ourselves in order to be productive, in order to thrive. And prioritizing ourselves is not selfish. It is actually necessary and important. And I say sometimes, and many times, it's okay to be selfish, because when we are, that means we're putting our needs first. And when we can take care of ourselves, then we can be productive and also take care of others. So identify what self-care looks like for you. It may not be what it looks like for me. So whatever it looks like for you, identify that and do something for you. 15 to 30 minutes, an hour per day. It puts you in a good mood, and then you're motivated to continue doing your work, because we know academia isn't an easy place to be. So we definitely need something for us to kind of rejuvenate us every day.
Yeah, just to add a couple of things, I feel like I was lucky enough to be part of a program called the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. And the two things that the speakers have spoken about are the two key things that I talk about for junior faculty, being setting your strategic plan and saying no. So a little bit of that. And the last aspect of self-care that I wanted to add to the conversation was just thinking about committees, especially as minorities in this field, and thinking about the inclusion and diversity space and the committees. Oftentimes we are the only person, only whatever it is, racial, ethnic group, or what kind of diversity characteristic you're looking at, you're often the only one in your place. So I think for me, that's a place where I'm very strategic for my self-care, making sure that I don't take on more than enough. And as Kalisha was talking about at the beginning, some of those issues being on such service activities could also get you burnt out. So I'm always very strategic about how many of those diversity and equity related, that's my area of research. So I'm already in it all day. And so I often think about how much more do I want to be involved in during service. So that's one thing I do for self-care, being strategic about my service related to diversity and equity.
And I also want to go back to what you talked about, Manka, with the NCFDD. If your school or organization has that or has bought into that program, I would definitely say to look into it. They also have a faculty success program. It's a 12-week program that goes through, identifying, setting up your strategic plan, identifying the things that might make you procrastinate and how you move them, and, kind of setting goals that are feasible and reasonable. And they also have writing programs throughout the year that you can attend and really follow up with. So that's one of the programs I would say, if your university has it, to join and participate. And it's really been helpful for me, and it's seemingly Manka too. So
wonderful. I plan to attend that workshop at some point. And now to our third question. Often we internalize the misconception that there's just not that many of us. We're not that visible. What does it mean to know I'm not the only one out here in this space?
I would say right here and right now, we're here and we exist. And, knowing that every day, I think it speaks to what Manka and Glenna have spoken about before with the self-care. And I think a part of that is knowing what you know, meaning you see us in community, not only here, the big organization on social media. Something that I've really benefited from, and I think it's just in me to do this, is just if you see someone or you're interested in getting to know someone, just reach out, and say, this is me, these are my interests. Even if it's a collaboration, just getting to know each other. I think that's a wonderful way to heighten your understanding of visibility of others, that's in the realm. And something that I benefited from is just multiple mentors, is that you may have a mentor for grant writing or papers, but also for lifestyle, with seeing certain people put boundaries and how to do that elegantly, and with preserving relationships and how to go about that. I say, in seeing that we are visible, we're here, you see us, reach out, please build community there. And then you can really learn from those who are trailblazing, those who have come even before that. And we can all build that visibility together and keep bringing forward the next generation and just fortifying in between. So that would be my suggestion, is to build that community and just reach on out. But we're here, so know that.
To add to that, I think this is one group we are in as Blacks in geriatrics and gerontology, but we have multiple identities. So the other thing is, you're a woman, you're a sister, you're a wife, you're an immigrant. So tapping into those people who you identify with on different levels. I'm part of this other group that is all immigrants. I'm part of this other female group. So we have multiple identities. So try to connect on different levels. I might connect with other African immigrant researchers who are not in aging. I connect with other African immigrant female researchers. So just thinking about yourself and who you are, and making sure that you recognize that you are different. You have your whole different identities. And so tapping into those identities, like Crystal said, and just connecting on those different levels is very helpful. And, especially for self-care, you might want to have a group of friends where, if you like painting, you tap into that identity of painting and going out to a paint and sit with some friends. So just making sure we're identifying who we are as a person and trying to meet those various needs that we could have. Yeah.
I agree with those. And I say, for me, it's comforting to know that I'm not the only one. And I think one of the reasons why I chose Emory School of Nursing was because there were many African-American, Black, immigrant, assistant professors in the School of Nursing who were Black. And it helped me to be able to reach out to them, knowing that if I was going through something, I could reach out and discuss and get feedback, because they identified with whatever it was that I would have been going through, or they may have experienced it, so that I can reach out and kind of get feedback and advise on how to move forward. And, for us, I think it was where you could ask questions, you could talk through challenges, and you could celebrate victories. So it was kind of like having a family there. And that for me was very encouraging and comforting. And that sense that you're not alone, I think, gives you comfort and even some strength to be able to speak up sometimes, where if you were alone or by yourself, you may not feel strong enough or empowered enough to say something. So I think it gives you that sense of, okay, I have a community and I know that I can express certain things because they would support me in doing this. Now, I feel like there are times where it may be important and necessary to start that part or blaze that pathway and be the only one or be the first. And in an instance like that, I think it's also important, as Manka was saying, to find a community outside of where you are, who you identify with, who you can still do these things with. A community of similar-minded people or friends or colleagues, so you can say, well, I'm here, this is what I'm experiencing, how can you support me through this? What would be your advice and stuff like that, so that when you have been the first and you have blazed that path, then others, Crystal mentioned, reach back and support you. You can now reach back and support others who are coming behind you because you have done that already. So I think that has been what has been helpful for me. And knowing that there's enough for all of us. So my success does not mean that you can't be successful, but we can all be successful together, because I think when we work as a team, when we work together, when we build together, then we are stronger and we are able to have more of an impact.
I love that, Glenna, with that piece that there's more than enough. I echo that wholeheartedly. And I also echo and extend what Manka was saying, that one thing I would always suggest is that the multiple identities, of course, and your professional identity is but one aspect of yourself, and always remember that. And as I was coming up, especially through undergrad, grad school, postdoc, and early career, I was very myopic in my view with my career and thinking about that. But I must say that during the pandemic, something that came up very positive is that I was exploring the other identities that I had, being into yoga. I love to read and reconnecting with all sorts of identities that I have and groups that I belong to, because ultimately that nourished me as a researcher, being a naturally curious person, someone embedded in communities that's looking to affect change there, and through research, that it always comes full circle. So pay attention to who you are as a person overall, not just with the identities, of course, but your general interests. That I say that has benefited me greatly there. And I always suggest that to people, to really nurture that paying attention to those things and taking part, as Manka and Glenna and others have said, that it's not selfish, it's really caring for yourself in that sense. So, and also being a whole person, which is important.
Yes, so good. Thank you all. We're now going to get ready to shift to the Q&A portion of our webinar. Just a reminder to any of our attendees, you can type your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. I'm monitoring both. I see Glenna, Dr. Booster Glasgow has already addressed one of the questions in the chat. Another question that came through from Darina Petrovsky is, thanks so much for your viewpoints. How do you guide your mentees who share same identities as yourself?
So I would say I'm from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so I'm also an immigrant. So for my mentees, I think for me, my experience initially coming from an island that was predominantly Black, moving to the United States where I think I've assimilated, as opposed to initially where it was probably more acculturation, where I knew about the culture. Now I have a deeper understanding and a depth of more the African-American experience, because I've been here for close to 20 years, as opposed to when I had just come here and I felt like I was still kind of looking from outside. So I would say often to my mentees who have just moved here that there are things that will change as you move along in your trajectory, as you kind of more understand the culture and the history of the United States. And in terms of, you might be Black and people might perceive you as Black, but your initial experience wouldn't necessarily be what the true African-American experience is. So understanding in your research to bring in a cultural lens, but also not being afraid to collaborate with other African-Americans who've been born and raised here, who may have that authentic experience that you still might not be able to bring to your research truly, because you don't really truly still understand that. I would also say to, you're a female in, I'm a female in nursing, which is a female dominated field. So I'm not necessarily a minority in nursing, but I'm a minority in research. And to embrace the opportunities that come with that. For me, there were many things that I didn't necessarily know. So I did a bachelor's to a PhD program in nursing. And it was one of my mentors who saw that when I was doing my associates to bachelor's and suggested it for me. So if somebody suggests an opportunity, be willing and open to pursue that, because you never know where it might end. So being open to just taking advantage of the opportunities that have been.
We may have lost her.
Forward and learning from them. But also, so I was telling somebody last, am I there? Okay. I've talked to so many people about, now that you're here asking for a salary increase and negotiating your salary and doing those things to make sure that where you are, you're valued, but you're also treated equally. So those are the things I would say to them, and just reaching out and forming relationships with people who you might share your research overlap with, but also people who can mentor you in terms of those identities.
I didn't know if any of the other panelists wanted to take a stab at how you guide your mentees who share same identities as yourself, or we feel like Dr. Booster Glasgow covered it all.
Just to add to what she said, I think the biggest thing that I often really want to identify is what my mentees' goals are, because oftentimes they come in and some people really do not, the junior ones often do not have a clarity of what they want. So most of the work I do at that phase is just trying to help them think about what are my passions, what are my desires, what are my goals, and then doing some of the work that Dr. Brewster has talked about, helping them identify it, helping them connect to opportunities that can meet those goals. And I really try to make sure that I'm not, especially for somebody like me who sees a lot of need for more, you know, whatever it is in my area, more female faculty, more Black faculty, more Black researchers, and thinking about, I often am conscious to make sure that I'm not saying go do research because we need more Black researchers, but I'm really conscious to thinking about what is it that you want to achieve. I have a couple MPH mentees right now, and our first meetings happened last week, and was just thinking, all right, you're here to get an MPH. What do you want to achieve after that MPH? And just helping them think through what their career goals, and then helping them connect to opportunities, because there's a lot of need. And so oftentimes it's a challenge for us as advisors to be able to just help them figure out their own path and make sure that they're walking in it and using most of the strategies that Dr. Brewster's talked about. Yeah.
I completely agree there. And I think to really build off of Manka, I always use a sort of analogy, if you will. I say, well, what is your house? What's the house that you would like to build? So when I first began in my career, say coming out of high school, I thought I'll lay my foundation for my house with this undergraduate major, and then I want to build the walls around this with social and neuro, with different floors, with quantitative and qualitative, and a roof that is stable with health disparities and health equity. And then I can live in that house and do the types of research that I would like to do, or whatever I saw myself doing. And then once I'm stable, I can start building my neighborhood, my collaborators, the committees I'm on, the grants I write, papers, etc., people I work with. So I always ask, what are some of the big points that you would like to do in your work? Because junior people, and even us all, you know, can be very nebulous in what we would like to do, but what are your general interests, and what do you really want to do or achieve with your work? And then we can start mapping out those sort of micro activities and then meso activities to say this is how you can meet it. And then I also give suggestions based on my own experience. I always lead with, these are things I think I did well, and so you should maybe try that. And these are things that I wish I would have done differently. Maybe you could think about doing that as well, differently, and also open to learning from them, because I realize that the field is ever changing. I have a niece that is now just starting graduate school, and I really advised her a lot through the process, but knowing that when I started graduate school almost 20 years ago, it's a different tapestry than now, but some things have remained the same. So being able to have that balance between this is what is enduring and this is maybe what you should try to do or avoid, and then learning from them to see where things are now and celebrating that for them, you know, that the progress that has been made.
I like your intentionality that you had about how you built your foundation. I don't think I was that intentional. I think I'm kind of going with the flow type of person, yet being intentional and focused about kind of where it is that I'm going. But I like that intentionality that you mentioned. I think another thing I would say to them though, is be okay with changing your mind. because sometimes you might start something and you find out that, okay, this might not be the path that I want to be on, but you're like, well, I'm on it already, so I probably should stay. So be okay with changing your mind if that is what you truly want to do, and being okay with doing that. And as mentors, also wishing success for your mentees and allowing them to freely move on to their next step. So letting them grow and spread their wings.
I love it. Beautiful, everyone. We have one more question that came through the Q&A, and it is, how has your experience been balancing your professional life with your family life?
Well, I'll hop in there then. I must admit, I don't really view it as a balance, because to me that would indicate sort of a separation. And to me, it harkens to what I was saying before with a whole person. So I consider myself in that way. So really it's nurturing all aspects of myself. So what are the things that I would like to see for myself? And this was a learning as I go sort of thing. I wasn't as intentional about this as I was my career trajectory, but I was saying, I wish I could connect more with my friends from Louisiana or DC at Howard. And then it was really, well, okay, how can I better do that? Is it me? Should I reach out? How can we do that? And then making time for what I would like to see. I love to read, so I always make sure to read for an hour each evening, just something outside of work. Is usually connected to work. I read a lot of nonfiction, but in my mind, it's not work related. And I always practice my yoga and really thinking, what is a life that would make me feel good when I lay down at night? That's my sort of barometer. When I go to sleep at night, how do I want to feel? What are those things that will help me with that? And that's how I manage my time. Every day is not perfect and it's not the same, but I just mean in general, how can I feel if it's me wanting to connect with my other women friends somewhere, or get more connected with my yogis, my fellow yogis, or reading more? I do that. And is it something that's nagging me in terms of writing? I just go ahead and do it. So I really go with what would make me feel better inside when it's time to just be me by myself, those private, very private moments. So I know that's a very kind of in-depth answer, but that's how I think about balancing family and career. And I just tend to go with that. What would make you feel whole and at least content in your private moments, and move with that.
I like that. I think too, I have been able to, I remember when my grandmother was here and my mom were here, and I would have things like, let's say I agreed to the presentation on the weekend, that we would all be going to the presentation together. So I'll be giving the presentation, they'll hear me give the presentation, and then we'll do something after. So it's kind of like a family event that we had. I have been lucky enough where they've been here with me. So most parts of the other responsibilities, I think, like the managing the household, my mom has really been good at helping with that. When a child comes into the picture, we shall see how that goes. Haven't figured that out yet, but soon enough I will. And then in a year or two, then I'll be able to tell you how that goes. But I think I have, to an extent, worked a lot and still do. And I enjoy it. And I think it's because I enjoy it and it fills my time. Then I don't feel necessarily it's out of balance currently. But I do remember there was one semester when I decided I was teaching, I was starting up my research with multiple projects, and I was also seeing patients in clinic like a day or so a week, and that became really overwhelming. And being able to identify, like Crystal was talking about, within your body, how that feels, and that does feel overwhelming, and being able to reevaluate and go and speak to the people involved, and then giving something up, because sometimes you will have to do that for your health and to maintain balance with your work and your relationships.
Glenna, can I just hop in right there? You raised such a great point because, with some things would have to go. And I found that being honest with myself helped me balance or integrate more, that sometimes it wasn't letting go some of the big priorities or strategize, things that I want to do, but it's letting go some of the ways that I mismanaged time. Like, do I really need to be on social media that long? Do I really need to say linger in front of the television? So it's really recalibrating some of the non-productive, and I mean productive in terms of just overall life, your self, not just your work, and saying, what are the activities that would make me feel better? Because sometimes we can get overwhelmed and just go like, I just want to kind of null out a little bit, but really saying, well, what can be nourishing, if you will, to use a yogic term. But I love that, Glenna, with having that support system. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really like what you all are talking about. And I'm just going to put a different frame on it, that the way it's exactly what you're talking about, but the frame I put on it is giving myself permission. So in academia, we're like, I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to. I'm not supposed to. There's like a whole list of, I'm not supposed to be working on weekends. I'm not supposed to be watching TV at this time. I'm supposed to be working Monday to Friday. So this kind of like some sort of dichotomies that we've put in place is just giving ourselves permission to not live by whatever that's supposed to or not supposed to is. And there are times when I was writing my grant, I was working more than 40 hours a week. But also that was just that particular time, and I gave myself permission to do that. And once I finished writing the grant, I gave myself permission to take some days off. So it's like just accepting that you have to live your life the best way, like Crystal was talking about. You feel comfortable doing it and giving yourself permission to do it, and not living by how your mentees work is. If your mentee is sending you emails at 1 a.m., you don't have to respond. Choose for yourself and give yourself permission to do whatever feels right for you and what works for you and your family.
Wonderful, wonderful ideas. I am listening and taking notes because I still have not perfected this at all. We could continue with the Q&A, but out of respect for people's time and the fact that now that we have Zoom meetings, we go from 1 hour to the very top of the next hour, we're not going to do that today. So we want to take this time to extend our sincerest gratitude to our speakers. Thank you for your time and effort in preparing for this webinar and for sharing your knowledge with us. Feel free to reach out to the speakers in case there's anything you would like to follow up on with them. I think they're going to put the speakers will put their information in the chat. I don't know if the speakers have any last minute pearls as we're winding down, but we are grateful for you taking this time to spend with us. And thank you again to all of our attendees for taking time out of your very busy schedules. But yeah, we'll open it up to the panelists one more time to see if you have any last minute thoughts, and then we will close out this webinar.
Maybe I can go first. And the one thing I would really stress is that people take some time. It doesn't matter how late you think it is. If it's today, just take some time to think about who you are as a person and the kind of work you want to do. Map it out. Just say, what is the kind of work I want to do? Where do I want to be? Who do I want to collaborate? And think about those things, because oftentimes we just go with the flow and you do not strategically think about it. And then before you know it, you're burnt out because you're taking on things that really do not fit. So if you spend some time just thinking about it, it doesn't have to be very detailed every day, every month, but just having an idea of maybe in a year or two, these are some of the goals I would like to achieve. Once you have those in place, you're better able to now make decisions about everything else that has to do with that. So that would be my big suggestion.
And adding to what Manka said, I think when you're mapping out your goals initially, you might say, okay, I want to accomplish this thing. For me, I've always wanted to do something with Dementia in the Caribbean. I just didn't know with whom or how it was going to happen. And one day I was submitting a manuscript to a journal and I looked through the editorial list, and lo and behold, there was a researcher from Jamaica. And I'm like, something may happen. So then I reached out to her, and we now have a small grant, and we're thinking about applying for a larger grant. So you have these goals and ideas, and sometimes, you say them out loud, and then you work on them, and you might randomly reach out to somebody, and it might turn into a really great working relationship. So I do agree with that. Never hesitate to reach out to persons who your goals overlap with, because it might be really open to work with you.
I agree with everything said here. I would also say in closing then is to be okay with the nebulousness or gray areas. Every day may not be the big strike or obvious in going along your career path, but trust the strategy that Manka spoke about, reaching out as Glenna did, and that strategy that I spoke about with this is working on your path and being okay with that gray area, sort of, the abyss, but then also never feel like a failure. You're moving forward, you're doing the best you can with what you know and what you have. Always keep that in mind. So never count yourself out and never feel like a failure. That's the biggest thing. So best of luck, and reach out if you would like.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you again to our speakers for their time, and to our audience for your attendance. We hope you found this a useful and meaningful experience. I know I did, and I've learned so much just from hearing you all speak. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy your Tuesday, everyone.
Thank you, and good luck, everybody.